I really am appreciative of you guys sharing both the community lens, but your personal lens of everything you've experienced and what you've seen. One thing that we talk about there's a lot of long overdue conversations going on in communities around Virginia and obviously beyond, about race, about systemic racism, about white fragility, white privilege. So as community leaders and organizers are coming out and trying to do things in their towns, their cities, or counties, what advice do you give those folks? I know you particularly talked about trying to develop leaders in the Black community, but what advice would you give those folks to help them change their communities for the better?
Talking.
Yeah, I have this saying that I came up with is, we must reveal before we can heal. And as Jill just mentioned, we have to talk about it. It cannot be a taboo subject. I mean, it is so hard for white people to sit down and talk about race. That's been my experience over the past 30 years since the Culture Center. And this is nothing new that Jill and I are doing. We have always welcomed a discussion on race. I mentioned that I lived in Boston for 20 plus years. And Boston is a racist city, but it's a totally different type of racism in Boston compared to what I see in Southwest Virginia. Boston was more of the overt type of racism. Southwest Virginia and the surrounding areas, in my opinion, are covert. It's not the cross burning, although we had one up in Marion, but typically you don't see cross burning. You don't see a lot of racism put in your face. It's that subtle type of racism. And I would give you a perfect example. You go into a grocery store, and not all cashiers, not all, believe me, not all, but this has happened several times over the course of years. You would have 2 or 3 white people in front of you, and the cashier will put the receipt in their hand. And when I get up there, she put the receipt down on the counter, on the table. She won't put it in my hand, or he or she, either one. And I said, well, I'm gonna start watching for that. And it has happened on too many occasions for it to be a coincidence. I mentioned that I helped coal miners for over 30 years in their federal Black lung benefits and health care. I represented a lot of coal miners in administrative law judge hearings. And, I would wear a suit and tie to these hearings, but there are several times that I would get on the elevator or walk past a couple elderly white ladies. They would take their pocketbook off their shoulders and put it on the other side away from me and try to secure it, like I was going to try to take their pocketbook away from them. Those are some of the subtle type of things that I've noticed here in this area. And I believe that it's because that we are so few in numbers that we just pretty much just don't exist. So therefore, you just ride out. And Jill has a story with the school system that I think that she needs to tell that supports what I'm saying.
And this was very typical. And I had mentioned that I did work for the school system and for a number of years, and we were having an event at the center, and I needed to borrow some chairs for that event. And I was going over to talk to the superintendent to see if I could borrow some chairs. And this woman that I worked with, white, she was in my office or something. I said, come on and walk with me, because I wanted to talk to Dr. Bishop. So we go to talk to Dr. Bishop, and I say, we're having this event at the cultural center. I need to borrow some chairs. And he immediately looks at this woman that's with me and says, what are you having at the center? She had no idea. She just happened to walk with me. But it was, that kind, and you see a lot of that. And with Ron, I believe what he's saying is true. It has much to do with an invisibility, as if you don't exist. And when our kids were going through school here, they were well, they're 4 years apart in age, but they would be one or two of maybe less than 10 kids in the whole Lee County school system of color.
Out of 3,000 plus.
Yeah, and that was an issue because not only did their peers not have have much experience with people that didn't look like them, but neither did our teachers, because the majority of the teachers that teach within the school system didn't go very far from home to further their education, and as a result, they didn't have much experience working with children of color, and that too, that hasn't changed much today. And there were, several situations where we had to intervene and had to meet with principals, had to meet with teachers, and trying to get them to understand. Well, and early on, I guess it was in maybe the early 90s, where Lee High School put on a halftime show of a Confederacy halftime show at a football game. And the football game happened to be Lee County, Wise County. Wise County had a large Black high school population at the time, and they were at the football game, and they got up and walked out. And it's that lack of sensitivity, and no one can understanding why are you offended by that. So that's an issue that's here. I don't see that as changing much without our bringing things to, it's institutionalized racism, bringing things to the attention of our leadership here. And that is a real challenge. That is a real challenge. And because, who are we offending? The Carsons, and we're not, it's because of that invisibility. Now as I mentioned, we raised two kids in a system that is not, funded real well because of how the school funding is determined. Our kids don't have the resources that a lot of other school districts have. But I can honestly say that we have really, developed some or produced some students that have done really well in spite of Black and white that have come out of this area that are doing so well today that we can be very proud of. Our two children, our daughter is a school psychologist. She practiced here in Lee County and recently relocated to Lebanon, to Russell County, where she's a school psychologist there. And she's also a volleyball coach for Southwest Virginia Community College. She was recruited for that. That's why she moved recently. And our son, he left here and went to UVA Charlottesville, where he did his undergrad, and then went on to law school at Rutgers in New Jersey. And today he is chief counsel for Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia. So, and the list goes on with a lot of young people from here. So in spite of our limited resources, we have done well in terms of producing students that have gone out into this world and have become successful in whatever they hope to achieve. But bottom line is it's education, education, education. We seize every opportunity to talk to people. Our goal is to empower the Black community, while at the same time not losing sight of the need for white people to understand what white privilege is and how that works, and how and that's a hard thing for white people to accept, white privilege. And that's our mission right now. We continue to work with these groups that we're working with, and we just have more energy, I think, to move forward and to seek change. But as Ron said, You got to talk about it, but you can't just talk about it and walk away from it and and nothing happens. That whole idea of changing this to anti-racism suggests that you're going to take action, whatever that action is. You've got to decide and be committed to taking action to affect the change. It's not going to be for everybody, but hopefully, if we can change one thought, one mind, and it's got to come from here too. It's got to come from here as well.
I'm going to talk a little bit about our friend who's an attorney here in this county, a white lady. And she would tell you on the record or wherever she's at that, you know, she is a recovering racist and that she fights very, very hard every day not to be one. And you have to respect a person who says that, because just the virtue of growing up in this society, the institution that we live in, you know, it's by design. And, you know, and the white people have these biases that the system has designed. And therefore, when in my opinion, only my opinion, when a person say, well, Ron, I'm not racist. Well, in your heart, you may believe that. But, you know, but with white privilege and all these biases, you are part of it and you play into it. But I want to hear that you recognize this, and this is what I'm going to do about it. And that's why we change it from dismantling to anti-racism workshops. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a one-day workshop that's pretty much just an opener for a 2.5-day workshop. And we have these different exercises that we do to bring out more awareness of everyday biases that people don't realize that they are biases. And but one thing that Jill has really talked about, and I appreciate it, is that our work is going to have to be a lot more on the internalized Black oppression, because I really, really didn't realize how oppressed Black people are in this country, including myself. And that just needs to be looked into a whole lot deeper. And that's what I'm committing my time now is learning more about internalized Black oppression.
Well, I really want to thank you guys for taking time to chat with me today. This has been extraordinarily insightful. And I'm also genuinely appreciative of you, again, talking about your professional backgrounds and what you've done in the community, but also the personal lens of, again, of what you've looked at things. Growing up in Southwest Virginia, returning to Southwest Virginia, and things you've experienced. And I think a lot of our community leaders throughout the Commonwealth, no matter what city, town, or county we're in, will find some helpful insights as well. So thank you again for taking the time to talk with me today. Appreciate it a lot.
Thank you. Thank you so much.